So I'm here at Hampden Park ahead of tomorrow night's Nations League clash between Scotland and the Republic of Ireland, and I'm delighted to be joined by a former Republic of Ireland international, Darren O'Dea, who's now coaching with Celtic. How are you keeping?
I'm doing very well, thanks.
Is this a stadium that brings back good memories?
Yeah.
A few cup finals?
One in particular, scored in. So actually myself, Aiden, McGeary scored, so good times for Irish football as well. So yeah, some good memories, alright.
What are the memories of McGeary like up here? It's funny because back in Ireland, it's like he's nearly 100 caps. There's a sense of unfulfilled talent, but they probably almost saw his best stuff up here.
I think that's a compliment to Aiden, that he's had the career he's had, and people still think he's maybe not reached his full potential. To have I'm sure he's got 90 odd caps, millions and £1 million worth of moves, playing the Premier League. Russia, made a real successful time in Russia. There's not many people who've done that, so if he's unfulfilled his talent, he's done alright. So he's remembered very, very fondly up here. He won a lot of kind of awards with the team, but also personal awards as well, so he's certainly remembered well up here.
I'll go in with the deep stuff straight away. What about you then? Did you fulfill your talent?
Yeah, I definitely did. I was different than Aiden. I had to maximise what I'd got in terms of natural abilities. Probably what seen me retire, particularly young. But yeah, listen, I look back and I certainly with maturity you could have done things slightly differently, but over the piece, I'd say I'd maximised it.
How does the former Republic of Ireland international, former footballer sit with you? You're 35. There's plenty of players your age still out there. You comfortable that it's?
Oh yeah. No, like listen, going back to 3-4 years ago now, I had an offer on the table to a 3-year contract to continue playing, and I accepted a job at, I'm going to say it was 10 times less salary to go and coach.
Right.
When I reached 31, I knew I wanted to be a coach. And the toughest thing for me was actually accepting that I wanted to stop there and then. Everyone had told me since I was 15 years old, play as long as you can. And I'd probably advise people that myself, but I was different. I wanted to stop. So I knew what I wanted to do. So from the
Why
day
did you
I
want to
retired,
stop?
I knew I was done. It was only a matter of just hanging on.
Physically or mentally?
No, more just in terms of progression. I wasn't going to get any better. I was playing obviously a decent level in the Scottish Premier League here, but I wanted to be. I was always at my best, and I'm at my best when I'm chasing something down. And at the minute, I feel I'm at the bottom of a ladder, trying to climb up. I certainly have a lot more drive about me than when I felt I was just going through the motions and trying to just get by.
It's interesting. I spoke to a golfer who had a very successful career on the European Tour, who said something similar, that like the fight of getting to the top was what drove them, and actually, when they became comfortable on the European Tour, the joy was sort of sucked out of it. Even though they were competing week in, week out at a really high level, just didn't feel like there was much to fight for. Yeah,
well, listen, I wasn't at the very top. There's many layers above me, but it got to a point where I had, I think it was around 30, I'd changed a few things in my life to try prolong my career, and found that I couldn't push the same way as I could when I was 20 years old. And going back to it, I think the way I trained to actually gain a career was a little bit manic and probably caught up with me a little bit physically. So no, I was very content, and to be honest, it wasn't necessarily to do with my body, it was to do with my mind. I wanted to coach. When I was going and coaching in the evenings with Dundee at the time, I was more looking forward to that than I was participating in training, and that was unusual for me.
So what was it about training when you were a kid, because you're obviously dealing with a lot of young players now with Celtic, when you say about really pushing yourself so hard in training sessions, what were you doing that was different to people around you?
I was doing extra all the time, physically, technically. I was staying on the pitch longer than people, and listen, it's hard to explain this to people that haven't gone through it. Listen, you have to have talent, you have to have certainly a high level of talent to break through at Celtic. You definitely need to. But I look back in the last kind of 20 years of players that have come through at Celtic in my lifetime and in my generation, and they all have similar characteristics in terms of humility and respect. I think that goes a long way, and understanding that the kind of level you're trying to aspire to is huge. So the way you work every day matters. It's not just a week, it's an actual full commitment to your life. So I think probably the penny dropped quicker for me than it did to other players.
I'd imagine there is a mental toll to that as well, that constant, by the sounds of it, a real intense pressure you're putting on yourself every single day.
You think I left home when I was 15. That's crazy. You say to a 15-year-old you need to make a decision that's going to affect the rest of your life. It's not natural. It's arguably not right. But yeah, you make a commitment. What drove me was kind of fear of coming back home. I didn't want to come back to Ireland and be the guy that didn't make it, and that probably stayed with me my whole career. So listen, as I said, I look back now. I thought I was the best player in the world back then, but looking back, I had a certain level of ability, but certainly the kind of mentality and the work ethic that comes with this was the key to making a career.
Like, you played and scored in this great stadium. You lived the dream. You represented Ireland, scored for Ireland. Are there any regrets when you, as you say, leave home at 15? So many of your friends look at your career and think, God, I wish I had that, but they went down a different path, had a probably far more relaxed, straightforward lifestyle. Are there parts of you that think things could have been different, or do you look back with, I did live the dream?
No, if I could change things, I would certainly have, when I first came over here, stuck in at education. I had things that I was meant to do that I didn't do. Now listen, people say, oh, it's well and good, you go and have a career, but I'm going back now and doing these things. So I just completed a business management course, and I didn't do it for any other reason than I just felt I'd no qualifications outside of football. I'd nothing in life outside of football, so I did it nearly just to prove to myself. But I was on that exact same course when I first came over here, 15, 16 years old. So if I could change one thing with experience, it would have been to use the spare time a little bit better.
When you're certainly 15, you don't think like
that?
No,
of course you don't. Sure, I think I was leaving most days in the college to go into the shops, or sometimes it was the bookies. So,
right.
But listen, yeah, that's experience, that's maturity.
It is mad when you think about it. Like, I know Brexit is changing things, and Irish players are waiting that little bit longer, but there's not a person listening who doesn't know somebody from their local club or locality who went over to England at a young age and went into digs, and as you say, we're the ones who ended up coming back home. It's such a natural environment to expect people to succeed.
Yeah, but sure, I remember like my first paycheck, and I didn't know tax. So I thought the club had paid me wrong because I expected a certain figure, and I'd only gotten a certain percentage of it, and that's mental. That you're in your own environment, you're on your own essentially, and obviously you have your parents back home, but other than that, you're on your own and you go for it. I look at actually again the ones I played with: Seamus Coleman, Shane Long, Kevin Doyle. Those type of guys stayed a little bit longer, and they're probably the ones I look at, and they've
good head on their shoulders.
Yeah.
So when you look back over the course of your career, and like bursting onto the scene at like 19 with Celtic, and very quickly starting to get involved in Irish setups, and then I don't know if you chased the sun, or like we spoke to you a lot through the years, and you're in different parts of the world. When did the passion for coaching start to kick in? When do you start thinking about life after playing?
Ukraine. So right. I grew up at Celtic, and I thought Celtic was the only way to do things because of the size of the club, the level we were at, playing in Europe, winning leagues. And then when I went to Toronto, it was a completely different environment and experience. And then I flipped over to Ukraine, and it was the polar opposite again. And I probably resisted it quite a bit as a player, and it was irritable at times because people were doing things differently than what I was used to. And I was associating...
The standards weren't as high?
No, just the methods of doing things were completely different. But I started to realise there was a million ways of doing things. And I also realised, being around different cultures, backgrounds, that there was a million different people out there, and they weren't all like me. And that understanding around people and I suppose a little bit of emotional intelligence came from it. I probably developed more in the year in Ukraine just as a person, because it took a lot to do. Obviously on my own there was a lot of unrest there, but from as a footballer aspect, but more as a person, developed massively by going abroad. And that then I started to realise I maybe had strengths when dealing with people, and naturally that then brought me into coaching.
With Stephen Bradley, the Shamrock Rovers manager, in studio recently, and he was talking about his passion for coaching. Even at 25, 26, he was looking forward to retirement because he was soaking up everything and taking notes of every training session. Were you like that when you were in Ukraine and when you were travelling around? Were you starting to notice different styles of different managers and how they made that connection with people?
Yes and no. Yes, I was, but what, and it still now is what intrigues me more is people. Is I enjoy working with people and trying to be part of their lives and trying to, I suppose, help them get to where they want to go to, whether that's collectively as a team or an individual person. So what probably intrigued me more was dealing with people from all different backgrounds. Everyone had their own individual story, and I suppose, looking back to my own career, I looked at, there were certain people in my life that helped enormously and treated me like an individual. So of course, yeah, you naturally, I look back in some of the fantastic managers I played under and coaches, and I wasn't so much into taking down sessions all the time. It was picking up how people behaved, how they acted, what maybe motivated them and why it did, and that's probably, I realised I wasn't too bad at mixing with people, trying to mix into an Indian dressing room when I was in Mumbai, Ukrainian, Russians, over in Canada, and with Americans and Canadians. So I realised I wasn't bad at it.
Yeah.
And I suppose if you can handle and be adaptable around people, you're half the way there. Been coaching, you can be the best coach in the world, have the best session. If people don't want to listen to you and you don't connect with them, it won't make a blind bit of difference.
The connection, and the very best managers obviously have it, but there's also a results element that is more important than everything. And longer term, we can get into your current work at Celtic, but longer term, like, is it the coaching, the development of players that you feel you'll always get enough enjoyment of that, or do you feel at some stage, actually, I want to be the guy on the sideline down there making the final decision and taking all the pressure that comes with that? Because it is a different thing, a huge thing from, helping players grow and getting the satisfaction of seeing them run out making their debut one day.
Yeah, so essentially why I was adamant on going down the path of working with in development environment and without those pressures you're talking about is I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I think you can do both. I think if you want to be a top level manager, you have to be a player developer, a developer of a team. You have to have clear identity of what you believe. There's a million ways of doing things, but what you believe, and then ultimately that is the thing that brings the success, brings the results you're talking about. I don't want to be a manager that goes in and is only there just purely to get a result on a Saturday. I want to do something more than that. So the first things were first is go and learn from the start and have the humility to understand that just because I had a playing career didn't mean I was going to be a good coach. I looked at them as two completely different jobs. Certain experiences I had as a player that maybe helped me, but if I want to be doing this for the next 30, 40 years, it's a new job and it's something I wanted to learn right from the very start. And
you're at the very early stages. I think you're going to be awarded your pro license tomorrow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Very young to be getting that. Like, do you see this as a 30, 40 year thing?
Yeah. No, I'm really passionate about it. Listen, I think I've touched on it without sounding arrogant. I think I'm good at it, but I think I've gotten good attributes for it. So now it's about putting in the work, and that's what I've been doing for the last number of years. I obviously did it while I was playing, a little bit of coaching, but now since I've retired, I've certainly worked a hell of a lot harder than I did when I was playing, a lot longer hours. But I love it. I love doing what I do every day, and I suppose that's the key to anything. If you love what you're doing, it certainly doesn't feel like work. So I'm really enjoying the last 3 years.
So what's your current title at Celtic?
It's kind of Celtic B team head coach. It's a joint role, myself and Steve McManus, who obviously is ex-Scottish international and Celtic captain. So the two of us lead the B team.
There's different setups in different countries in terms of what a B team, a reserve team, an under 23 team involves. How does it work in Celtic? So what players are you dealing with?
Yeah, so essentially the reserve team, that's the easiest way to maybe explain it. But the difference is now this year there's obviously been a bit of restructure in the club where it's directly under the manager. He takes a massive say in it, so it's essentially trying to align our team into the first team in terms of style and play, culture, profile of player, recruitment, everything aligns into the first team, and hopefully that gives a kind of the gap between reserve team football and first team football is huge, especially at Celtic because of the size of the first team is at. So hopefully this kind of alignment gives us a better chance to get more players through.
Brilliant thing for the players to have that they're ready to slot into Ange Postecoglou's system, but also as a coach it's an interesting dynamic because you, with all your travels and all your experience, probably have ideas about how the game should be played, but you're having to implement what somebody else believes in. I guess you need to balance that up in your head, that you're learning from clearly a brilliant manager. Is there room for self-expression within that?
So these again goes back to the very start of why I went down this route. It was I have a belief in how football should be played. Again, I go back to, there's a million ways I do not have a belief. I wanted to work at a club that I wouldn't have to sacrifice my own principles. So I can assure you, having to line in with this manager, I'm not sacrificing any of the principles I have in my head. He's got a wonderful way he sees football. Now the nuances and the way he does certain things are unique to him, but it's a pleasure to coach it. It's a fantastic style, and as I said, the broad principles are exactly what I believe in as well.
Yeah, he seems like a brilliant person to be around. You say he has that emotional intelligence that you feel you need, but also the style of football. Like, it is the modern style of football. You probably grew up with a lot of managers who, I don't want to say is old school, but there was a more direct, at times a bit more defensive. Like, crowds these days, they want to see strong, attacking, possession football, and there's a few teams doing it better than Celtic right now.
Well, Celtic are built on it. Celtic Football Club is built on entertaining people, and of course the byproduct of that is winning cups and leagues. Listen, I don't want to get too dramatic with it, but I do feel this manager is just, it's perfect timing for me, because all the kind of brave things I'm saying of wanting to play in a certain way and wanting my team to represent a certain style, and the consequences of that being winning leagues and winning cups. Of course we all want to do that, but I want to do it in a certain way. He's living proof. He's sticking his neck on the line, and when things get tough, you see the strength he's got and how much he actually believes in what he does. So clearly the whole club, the players, the coaching staff, everyone in the club takes strength from that, and hopefully I know I'm learning a hell of a lot from it. So
he's taken a very active interest. You're getting to spend a lot of time working with him and learning off him.
Yeah, which is fantastic, part of the role. I think the way he'd maybe describe it is myself and Stephen would be kind of head coaches and he's like a director of football, so ultimately everything will go through him, but he gives us a lot of kind of autonomy to make decisions. Again, that's a fantastic learning experience for me, but yeah, he's someone that you look at and you think in 30 years time I'll probably be repeating things he said and learn from. So that's gold dust. That's when you know you're in the right place. So I'm very fortunate in that sense.
And you've seen how long it at times can take managers to make an impact. Like, it's incredible how quickly you watch that Celtic team and it's in the mould of what he wants, how he uses the wingers. Were you surprised by how quickly everyone was able to buy into it and how he was able to get the team playing the way he wanted them to play?
If you had asked me before he came in, yes, I would have been surprised how quickly he did it, but then when you see him up close, and it goes back to he's so consistent in what he believes, and you can
just
only
the clarity of the message
so clear, and he'll never wobble. And he's managed the Celtic Football Club, which is enormous pressure every day, but he's clear in what he wants, and ultimately then the players are. I think now as a supporter, when you come to the stadium, you know what you're coming to watch. So obviously my job is to align into them. It's a tough feat to try align with myself and Stephen to try kind of mirror what they're doing, because obviously the standard they've set is so high, but it's a fantastic challenge.
It must be a really exciting time to be around it as well, because as well as the team are doing on the pitch, there's just such a buzz around the club. Like, people all over Europe are talking about Celtic and the attractiveness of that style of football. I'd imagine going into the training ground every day, it's probably as high as it's ever been.
Listen, again, that's something he's big on, is the culture, the environment being correct, and people wanting to be part of it, and ultimately wanting to come in to get better every day. So I suppose I mirror what the players are trying to do. I want to come in and I want to be part of it, and I want to get better every day. So as I said, I'm very fortunate, and I feel very lucky that I've kind of worked my way into this position, and things now at the minute are very good for me.
Have you got to spend a bit of time with him away from football at all?
No. I don't think anyone else knows football.
It's just football.
Yeah.
Your role now, I obviously, you're 35. We look at you as a very young coach, but for the 17, 18-year-olds who are coming in, you're an old man. Telling them how things were back in your day. How relevant is what you went through at Celtic to the young players you're dealing with now? Because that paycheck that you got is probably 3-4 times what they're getting.
No, I don't know.
You did all right?
Yeah, no, I'm kidding on. I tried to step away from that, because as I said, everyone is individual. Every player I deal with is just completely different, and they could be, some are from different countries, and that's natural that you think they're different and they have different backgrounds. But there's guys that are living and grew up streets apart. They're different, and their stories are different, and how they behave and what makes them kind of motivated, their family background, everything. I love getting to know that side of the players and seeing kind of what makes them tick. And I think once you really understand that, I think it's really easy to coach them. And I've been fortunate. I've worked with kind of quite a large group of players for pretty much the 3 years I've been in. I know them inside out, and that makes my job very, very much simpler, because I know what's what with them. And the biggest thing is they trust me. So gaining trust from especially young players, I can't really comment on first team players. I'd imagine it's very similar, but gaining the trust of them is the key. And then after that, it's ultimately about the information I give them, and I'd like to think I work my very hardest to get the best possible information they can get.
You came at a time when there was a conveyor belt of talent going from Ireland to Celtic every single summer, it felt like. With the changes around Brexit and all that, it's slightly different. There are still quite a few young Irish players like Rockavata, who you'll be working with. What's your sense of the skill set of the young players who are arriving at Celtic, considering now they're bringing in players from all over the world?
Yeah, I've probably noticed a slight difference in Irish players in particular. I think the education they're getting now here in Ireland, or they're getting back in Ireland, is better. I can tell from the way. I think there's a lot more technical players coming through. It remains to be seen. It's hard at Celtic. Listen, Celtic are a club that they're obviously, we've got a recruitment team that looks right round Europe. Ireland is right at the forefront of that, but you're competing with teams not only now in England, but you've seen a number of players in the last kind of couple of years, couple over in Italy and in different countries. So it's very hard to kind of get the best talent in any country. But certainly Ireland is producing, I think, players now that I'm starting to see a kind of slight change in the profile of player.
Yeah. The education side of it, is that something you're trying to drill into those young players as well? You touched on it at the start of, you should have been doing things when you came over to Celtic, but maybe the bright lights and all of that forcing those young players actually to take the educational side of it a bit more, so that they do have not just something to fall back on, but just
I'm big in it, but I tell you, the worst is the parents.
Right.
The parents don't want them doing it.
Wow.
So you think it's all about the kids and that. Trust me, I've done my level best to get players.
And why is that, do you think?
Because they see the opportunity, and they probably think that if they take their eye off football, that it's impossible to possibly commit any other time to anything else. And I completely understand it, because I did it myself. But I think with age and maturity, you look back and think, no, I could have done that easily. I could have aligned a degree or whatever it may be, or over here it's hires, or your leaving cert, whatever it is. But listen, that's my kind of thing. I'm sure there's plenty of players that would say they weren't bothered in the slightest. They didn't get any sort of education, but it's something I look back on and thought, well, I'm doing it now, so I wish I'd have just done it then. You
touched on your time in Ukraine and how much you learnt over there. You were in Ukraine around the time of the initial aggression into Donetsk. I'm sure you have a lot of close friends there. How has that been over the last 6 months, knowing what you know and having to watch all the pictures that everybody else is becoming so aware of, and the conversations you've had with people back in Ukraine?
Yeah, it's scary, because obviously there's a lot of places that you hear are obviously there's trouble in that. I remember hearing someone's family was from there, or their parents were from. A lot of the kind of guys over there didn't speak great English, so you're speaking through Instagram and it's emojis these days, but it's actually it's the brilliant side of social media. You can still kind of converse with them. I think the large majority of them are fine personally, but of course their families, extended families, it's a horrendous time. And the connection I had over there with people, it was a wonderful country. It's scary, and it's listen, I'm no worse off than anyone here. I certainly wouldn't patronise anyone. We're lucky and fortunate that we're here and we're watching in, but hopefully things can unravel there and essentially stop, because it's a fantastic place and somewhere I'm really fond of.
You're going to be back here tomorrow then, and Scotland against the Republic of Ireland. It's a huge game. I think it's going to be pretty much a sellout here. What's your sense of what Stephen Kenny has done over the last couple of years?
I love it. I was involved obviously in the national team with Trapattoni, and as much as there was success, there was many a time I either read or kind of heard through family, friends, the papers, that the style of football wasn't good enough, it was boring or it was too pragmatic, and I think that's been levelled at a number of managers, and I think of all the successful Ireland managers in my lifetime: Jack Charlton, Mick McCarthy, Trapattoni, Martin O'Neill, and to a certain extent I loved watching some of those teams, but to a certain extent they were pragmatic. They played off energy and on the front foot and put the ball forward quickly. And I've heard a lot of Irish people and fans speak about style of play and maybe dominating the ball, a more modern approach. And you've got a guy in Stephen Kenny and Keith Andrews that have gone in and said, right, we'll stick our neck in the line. I admire I admire anyone that does or takes up the role of management, first of all, but certainly that has that clarity that we spoke about, to go in and go through a sticky patch and have their maybe futures questioned, but say, no, this is the way we're going to do it, and I admire it greatly. And I think you've seen over the last year certainly strides, and you've touched on it. Results have to come eventually, and fingers crossed they are slowly but surely getting there.
Scotland were here on Wednesday night, very impressive against Ukraine. Celtic-esque almost, with the high intensity to it, and they pressed up really high on Ukraine. It was a world away from what we saw during the summer against the Republic of Ireland. It feels, from listening to the Scottish players, you probably got a sense of it in Scotland, that there was quite the fallout from that defeat to Ireland.
Yeah, I have to admit, we're watching the game, I was obviously delighted because Ireland were playing so well, but Scotland were really under par that night. So I don't expect that tomorrow night. It's a very good side, Scotland. A lot of excellent individual players, but Steve Clarke's done a fantastic job with them collectively. So I would be expecting a hell of a bigger challenge than what Ireland faced before. So I think tomorrow night will be, to get the same result again, it's going to take a big ask.
What about the defensive selection for Stephen Kenny? Because he has a hell of a lot of options there. The expectation seems to be that Nathan Collins will start, that John Egan will start, and then it's one of Shane Duffy, Seamus Coleman or Darragh O'Shea as part of a back three. What are your thoughts as a centre back on all those players?
Well, I think it's the profile of player that fits the way Stephen Kenny wants to play. I think if you play an extra centre back, if you like, in there in Shane Duffy, it maybe gives you solidity. It gives you certainly threat from set plays and aggression in your own box. If you play someone like Seamus Coleman, it probably gives you more fluidity to build the play. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Stephen Kenny maybe opting for something like a Seamus Coleman in that position, because obviously he's naturally a fullback. He'll give you that comfort in possession, and as I said, that filters into what Stephen is ultimately trying to do. Either way, they're good selections to have, and seems like Ireland are now building a kind of a group of players, and there's headaches for Stephen where earlier in his kind of reign there wasn't so many to pick from. Now he's given experience to younger players that have kind of stepped up.
We need the OD, I want to manage Ireland headline at the end of this. Is you're still very young. I imagine it's a patient approach you're taking towards next steps along the way. That by the sounds of it, you're loving life, learning under Ange Postecoglou.
Yeah, my biggest thing was getting in an environment that I didn't need to bend my own kind of beliefs in football, and certainly Celtic is more befitting of that. And I just want to be challenged and feel like I'm challenged and have the opportunity to learn every day. As long as I feel like that, I'll be content, and I certainly feel like that now. So where that takes me, I don't know. I sat at the start of my playing career and thought I could predict it. I certainly wouldn't have predicted the places I ended up. What I do know is just I probably enjoy more now living in the moment. Right. I don't worry about the future. As long as I work hard enough, I'm sure good things will happen.
Sure, you were living in the moment when you were scoring out here.
I was thinking of getting off the pitch. I was cramping up. It's because I wasn't living my life right. I'm doing it now though anyway. So no, listen, I had great times. One particularly here is probably what Celtic fans remember me for. There wasn't that many to remember anyway. So scoring a cup final here was special.
Yeah. Very best of luck with everything, Darren. Great to
Thanks
talk to you.
Brilliant. Thank you.